Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here. Hope you're all doing well. This video is going to be my successor video / part 2 video to another one of my videos where I took the Intel Core i5-6600K and compared the gaming performance of that processor when it was at stock versus overclocked speeds. I guess you could say this is part 2 of the is overclocking worth it. So in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the MSI Radeon R9 390 and doing the same type of testing that I did with the 6600K. I will be running the card at its stock configuration, which is 1000 MHz to the core clock and 1500 MHz to the memory clock. Then I will compare it to the results I obtain when the card is overclocked. The overclock speeds that I am running on this card are 1150 MHz to the core clock and 1650 MHz to the memory clock. Generally, most of the titles that are being released over the past few years are typically GPU bound, so these tests should give you a good indication of whether or not overclocking will benefit you. Many people say that you should overclock whatever hardware you have that can be overclocked since it's basically free performance. However, is it really worth the trouble going through multiple sessions of trial and error on the edge of your seat as you're watching the benchmark or stress test, just praying that nothing will crash? Will it be a fair enough trade-off for a performance boost at the cost of higher temperatures and power? Well, stay tuned and see for yourself whether or not overclocking the R9 390 is worth it. So for my test methodology, I used a few demanding titles that have been released over the past couple of years. I ran these games with the card running at its stock speeds, and then again when overclocked, and I achieved some interesting results. But before I show you the benchmarks, I will first go over the system that I will be using to conduct this test. So for our test system, I will be using the same rig that I featured in my 2015/2016 gaming and workstation setup, with some minor changes. If you haven't seen that video, I'll have a link down in the video description below so you can check it out for yourself. The specifications for this test system consist of the following. For the CPU, I have the Intel Core i5-6600K processor. This is based on Intel's 6th generation Skylake architecture. For our CPU cooler, we have the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo with an extra fan attached to it for a push-pull configuration. For our motherboard, we have a GIGABYTE G1 Z170 Gaming 7 LGA 1151 ATX motherboard. For the RAM, I went with a pair of G-Skill Ripjaws V-Series 2x4 kit running at 2800 MHz. For the graphics card, the star of the show, we have the MSI Radeon R9 390. For the storage, our system has a Samsung 950 Pro M.2 NVMe 512GB SSD, which is what I'm using as the boot drive. And along with that, our system has one Western Digital black hard drive and one Western Digital blue hard drive, both of which are 1TB. Powering the whole system, we have an EVGA Supernova 750W G2 80 Plus Gold power supply. And finally, for the case, I went with the Corsair Carbide Series Spec 02, which will provide ample airflow throughout the entire system. Now that I have went over the specs of the test system, let's just jump right into these benchmarks so you can see the results for yourself. And there you guys have it. From the results we can see that by overclocking the R9 390, we obtain an average frame rate increase of 10 FPS. Games such as Dirt Rally, Tomb Raider 2013, and Metro Last Light showed the highest improvement in frame rate, which means that these games are mostly GPU bound. So having the R9 390 overclocked for GPU bound games will help push out more frames. Games such as Hitman Absolution, GTA 5, and Assassin's Creed Unity showed little difference when the card was overclocked. Therefore, these games are mostly CPU bound, and depending on what type of processor you have, it might hold you back. I also threw in a couple of synthetic benchmarks to show you how much of a difference there will be when the card's overclocked and when pushed to its maximum limits, and how it was translated from the game's results. So now that you have seen the results for yourself, I'm going to ask the same question that I did in my last video. Is it worth it to you? I personally don't even run my card at these overclocked speeds because it's not beneficial to me. I am only running a 60Hz monitor, so having the game render higher frames than 60 won't be noticeable to me since the screen's refresh rate is capped at 60, and because of that, I don't need the card to push an average of 10 extra frames. For some games that really need the boost, then sure, I will use the overclock because it also increases the average minimum frame rate. If you've seen my other videos, I usually run my card at 1060 MHz to the core clock and 1525 MHz to the memory, without any extra voltage or increasing the power limit. It's basically the stock factory overclock that comes with the MSI R9 390. Now on the other hand, if you're playing at a higher resolution or have a 144Hz monitor to take advantage of the high frame rate, then yeah, definitely go for it. In that case, you would want your card to be pumping out as much frames as it can. It will be a trade-off for extra power consumption and heat, but in that scenario, it will be worth it. And because of that reason, having a monitor such as the BenQ XL2730Z 1440p 144Hz monitor with FreeSync is at a high position in my future upgrade list. Well guys, that is all that I have time for today. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please hit that like button. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments section and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more videos like this. As always guys, take care and I'll see you in the next one.